So what had to happen was an entire shift in the way that we thought so that we would willfully surrender to the government. Now it sounds absurd, I know, but it's happening. It's happening before our eyes. What else might a fascist do? Because they're going to call Trump a fascist in days after the election, right? So what else might a fascist do? Well, a fascist might, in policy, say, hey, let's have something like a Green New Deal, right? So what might the Green New Deal do that people might not be able to see? Well, one thing I always say is a fascist does not like a large middle class. They don't. A fascist wants a ruling class and a poor class, an oppressed class, right? A large middle class is not what the fascist wants. Well, what has Trump done? He's cut taxes, which has increased on an average of $4,000 in every household, right? He has decreased regulation. Well, what would a Green New Deal essentially do? We're going to talk more about this in our Marxist video if you want to go check it out in our Marxist series. What something like a Green New Deal will do, it will force us to have to pay for something that we can't pay for. Well, what do you have to do when you implement a policy you can't pay for? You have to increase money supply, right? You have to make new money. Like that's the only way you can pay for something like this is to make new money. Well, if you make new money, what does that do to the people that have money in the middle class? It devalues their actual money. So that'd be like if Dustin had there's 100 stocks in the stock market for a certain company, and Dustin owned 50% of it, and all of a sudden overnight, they said he owned 50 shares. They said, well, we're going to go to 200 shares overnight. We're just going to increase the shares. Well, overnight, Dustin only becomes a 25% stockholder, right? Because we increase shares just willy-nilly however we wanted to, and his entire value has been decreased. That is what's going to happen with something like the Green New Deal. And that is what they intend to happen. They don't care about your health insurance. They don't care about all that stuff. They care about the middle class being devalued in their wealth so that they can get it back to a upper class and a lower class. And so again, that's what a fascist would do.
I would say it's even more sinister, actually, around the environmental.
You would always say it's more sinister.
But for real, though. For real, though. And this goes back to our history. And it's not even that hard to find. But it nicely, though, ties everything together. Because you think, oh, what's the Green New Deal? What does caring about the environment have to do with it? Everything. But no joke, the environmentalist movement, go look it up. The environmentalist movement, the green movement, is the ecology movement. And where they start is in land conservation. And where they start is by decrying industry and those terrible fossil fuels that are destroying the earth and these kind of things, causing global warming, man-made global warming. But underneath that, at the very beginning is this concept of human overpopulation. The basic premise of their worldview is that the planet is overpopulated with human beings, that human beings are the problem, and because we're just really like another animal, but yet but we consume and because of our technological innovations, we've made industry and things like that just consume all the natural resources, pollute the environment, and so humans are really the problem. And so we need to rein all that in. We need to have population control. So at the beginning, this wasn't glossed over and disguised as environmentalism. In the beginning, it was more like eugenics. Hey, let's figure out how to sterilize whole populations of people so that they can't have babies anymore. Africa, let's support and grow this abortion industry and position it in the neighborhoods and the parts of the country where the less desirable people are. African Americans. So hey, brown people, people of color, Who are the targets of these things? That's because
Let's take fathers
in
out of
their
the home.
mind, in their worldview, the brown person is an inferior person because in the evolutionary Darwinian point of view, they are literally a different species that has evolved
Absolutely.
over here versus this more superior group over here. And so at the core of environmentalism, I know that most people who, the teenager who's concerned about the world ending in 10 years has no idea about any of this stuff, and they really just caught up in kind of romanticized desire to save the planet and are looking for something
Bartender
meaningful.
Turned political.
People are just looking for something meaningful to be a part of. I get that. We're not talking about those people's motives. They're just misled. But the people behind this that drive the policies that in turn over decades, this takes us back around to our economic policy. They've used some of these same justifications and others to undermine our industry and gut it so that now we are no longer able to produce for our and provide for our people, and we're a weak nation. And in the end, we are so weakened that we're easy to topple, and both topple from the inside out through corruption and bringing their people up through our system to take over, as well as raising up more formidable opponents who are built up in their strength and might in their industry, China, and they're
actually their citizenry under control.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the thing. They have their citizenry under control. They look at China and they go, hey, they can control their people. These Americans, man, they got guns and they're out of control, and we really don't know what to do with them. So let's just destroy and collapse the economy on top of them where they got nothing left. Then we'll move it to a place where we have the citizenry under control and we can take over from that position.
What would another thing that a fascist movement would do? Would maybe take away your Second Amendment, take away the guns? Man, it just seems like.
But not in a way, and I want people to hear this, because somebody right there went, nobody's come to knock on your door and take your gun. They don't have to. They don't have to. What they have to do is put a tax on, let's say, your clips. Like, let's say your clips to your guns. Like, let's say they want to tax those at $200 a clip. By the way, that's in the Biden program. Go check it out. Right? They can literally hinder people that make ammunition, because what good is a gun without ammunition? Right? They can start to put regulation on those kind of things to where they don't have to take your guns. They can just take everything that goes with a gun. Right now, I have a buddy that's in gun manufacturing sales, and he's like, dude, we're a year and a half out from being able to. He actually had to stop selling guns and go do something else because he can't get all the parts to be able to make the guns so that they can sell them. Right? And so, like, they can do so many things to destroy your Second Amendment that's not knocking on your door and taking your gun. Right? They can regulate this industry in such a way that gun sales and ammo sales and all those things go away, or they make it unaffordable to be able to own a gun and to be able to own ammo.
Well, I think we've laid out numerous things here that help perhaps
I want to point to one more thing too,
Okay.
because you talked about abortion clinics being in the black communities. How about the welfare state being extended to black communities to be able to allow the women to get by without the father, and the father to be able to leave the home, so that now all that you're left with is a bunch of broken black families in this country, and now the government knows they can be the daddy to the next generation of black kids, right? And they have been being that daddy and indoctrinating that group to pretend like they care about them when they don't care about them, and they raised their ugly head in the Black Lives Matter movement when they talked about they were not for the nuclear family. It literally said it. They took it off their website because they realized, oh crap, we better not show that. That we just kind of exposed ourselves. They're not for the nuclear family. Throughout all of history, if you want to find the demise of a society, just take out the nuclear family. It will always fail. And back to Dustin saying population control. Well, how do you control the population? You don't be for the nuclear family. A mother, a father, and a bunch of children, right? I mean, think about the way our society's talking right now. You know, one kid's probably enough. More than that, they're just a headache, right? I mean, You don't want to do that. Don't take responsibility at a young age. You got to you're in your 30s to have children. Well, how about that? Well, if you're in your 30s before you start having kids, it's hard to have multiple kids, right? Like, just go sow your wild oats. Right now, you have this just pushing off of all these things of responsibility, really. You have
Yeah,
the
and you
pushing off
see
of
in that
responsibility.
just encourage people to go indulge in their most base desires.
'Cause families are
their
boring.
their animal instincts, because you only live once and you gotta enjoy it the most while you're here. And so you don't want anything in your life getting in the way of your good time and your opportunity to choose how you want to live and create that enjoyable life for yourself. Versus in that, on the surface, that's that there's something in that appeals to all of us, but yet what we would point back to in the responsibility and the significance and the weight and the design of creation for where we're here in the interest of not only ourselves but the whole, and not only us in this time but the future. And so we live in such a way where we invest our lives and we live sacrificially in such a ways, and we act and we build in principle in such a way that the foundations and the layers we're adding will last over time. They won't wash away. They won't burn up when difficult things come, but they're principled, and we build on that, and we're able to build society. We're able to build communities, families, and we're able to build a future and keep moving forward with humanity versus live in the moment. Forget the past. Don't worry too much about the future. Just live in the now. And that population group who's so focused and manipulated and controlled by that is in a very dangerous place. And I think that is increasingly, because a lot of people maybe they were there kind of, but are being wakened up. I know that this is an ongoing conversation for us, and it's a battle that we're going to keep having to fight and awaken people up to, so that we don't fall back into this or further slide that direction. And so this goes on past the election. And I think in the days and weeks after the election, when there's a lot of noise about what's really going on and who's at fault and who the bad guy is, and we as a population are trying to discern what to think about this, our hope and prayer is that people can think clearly and see, the behaviors, the direction, the particular type of agenda that lines up with the outcome that you hope to have for your future and for the nation. And it could be a tricky thing. We want to be here for people in it.
And we would, I'm going to do a little commercial here. We would highly encourage you to tune into our Cultural Marxist series. I know I keep saying that, but a lot of the things that we're talking about is an ideological shift, right, in the way that we think. And in that shift, you'll start to see cultural Marxism raise its ugly head, because you have to think about it. Political takeovers, political revolutions are very bloody, right? And they've happened in the past when the ruling class has had the military might, or they've had the weapons, and they haven't necessarily had the numbers, but they didn't have to have the numbers because they had the ability to defeat the numbers through some kind of technological advance, whether it be guns or whatever. But when it comes to America, the reason you can't, a political takeover would not work here is because the citizenry are armed. And that was the point of the Second Amendment. It's not so I can go out and hunt, because I hear people all the time say, we're not going to take away your right to hunt. I don't have AR-15s to hunt. Like, I don't use that to hunt. Like, that's not what the Founding Fathers were talking about. Well, they need to hunt and be able to go into the frontier and be able to take care of themselves. We need a Second Amendment. No, it was so that you have the weapons that the military has, so that if anything happens, you could defend yourself from some sort of political takeover. So we knew that political takeover could not happen in this country. So what had to happen was an entire shift in the way that we thought, so that we would willfully surrender to the government. Now, it sounds absurd, I know, but it's happening. It's happening before our eyes, right? And we have to ask ourselves, how did we get here? How did we get from this people that went into the wild frontier that was like, I'm going to take the risk with my life to go out and take the freedom that's in front of me. There's land for free out there. There's a lot of danger. Yeah, but it's free land. Let's go, right? We might die, but I'm in for, I wish I'd lived back then. It'd been so much fun. But it's like, let's do it. Like, that's the risk. That is what America attracted, those kind of people. Like these risk-taking people that were like, free land? Freedom? You could die. I don't care. Death is worth the chance of freedom, right?
Yeah, an opportunity.
Yeah, an opportunity. And now we're this culture that's like, hey, will you take care of me, government? I just want to sit in my little apartment and just have a check come to me. Like, what happened? How did we go from these people to these people? Something had to happen in the middle.
Well, I'd say too that while we consider that, because it's super duper relevant for how it has played out culturally and in our time and what's actually going on around us, the how it happened is even greater and more powerful because it's spiritual.
Amen.
And that, of course, we don't lose sight of as we're looking at history. This is how the spiritual realm and its influences play out in human affairs and human history. And so there are spiritual forces behind these movements and directions. And so that's something you need to tune into as well and observe. And again, just who are the ones, is the fascist the one that embraces God and his character and desires? Or are they against God usually and really
and against the Imago Dei?
Yes,
both which is why our video on abortion Dustin called child sacrificing.
Yeah, because there really is behind this a lust for power and control and even blood.
Yes,
and the forces of good and the forces of light in the world don't have a lust for those things. Mm-hmm. And if you assume power even reluctantly because you know how dangerous it is and you really would just rather go live your own life, but sometimes you've got to step up and take responsibility and assume that power for a short amount of time in order to set things right. And so I pray that God, and I believe that God, the one true God, the God of the Bible, has appointed this Trump administration, not because they're the most moral people to have ever lived, not because they're the greatest expressions of the life and walk of Jesus Christ, but because they are oriented in and aligned with the God of the Bible and truth and justice and righteousness. And in the end, we will see those things at least reestablished in part for a time, for a season. God is at work in this time to deliver us out of a dangerous situation, but that doesn't mean that the coast is clear after that. That means He has set us on solid ground, and now the time to do work has begun and rebuild a sturdy foundation based on His truths and the timeless truths that our nation has been founded on, and all of these things.
It's mercy.
It is God's mercy. And even the events in the coming week, as we will see before us, the final desperate attempts of an enemy who's trying to not lose power and control. Even in that, there's mercy on them. Perhaps some of them still will wake up, but there's mercy on you to recognize and see more clearly the sides here and what side of this battle you would put yourself on and align yourself with to fight the good fight. We don't want. One side is hopeful for good things for everybody, and the other side, and another tactic of a fascist, is to just use that power and control and try to suppress any dissenting point of views and cut off the opposition. No, we just want any opposition to see the light, to see the truth, and just do what is actually in your best interest instead of continue to be deceived.
And maybe the most important point of all is that this was supposed to be a 10-minute video.
Oh well.
Oh well.